Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that a conflict thousands of kilometers away has made your life more expensive. Your fuel costs more, your flight costs more, your groceries cost more, and suddenly interest rates might stay higher for longer. You might think these things have nothing to do with each other, but they can all be connected by one thing: oil. And right now, the world is being reminded of just how important oil still is. Here's the strange thing: you don't need to own an oil company. You don't even need to drive a car. A rise in the price of oil can still affect you. Why? Because oil isn't just used to make gasoline. Oil is involved in transportation, shipping, farming, manufacturing, chemicals, plastics, and countless products that move through the global economy. So when oil becomes more expensive, the cost of moving and producing things can rise almost everywhere. But how can one commodity have so much power? Let's follow a simple product. Imagine a box of food. First, a farmer needs machinery to produce the food. Then the food is transported to a processing facility. The factory packages it. A truck takes it to a warehouse. Another truck takes it to a supermarket. Every step requires energy. And much of the world's transportation system still depends on oil. So if oil prices rise, businesses suddenly face higher costs. They have two choices. They can absorb the costs and make less profit, or they can pass those costs on to consumers. And that's how an oil price shock can eventually become an inflation problem. Oil prices rise. Transportation becomes more expensive. Production becomes more expensive. Businesses raise prices. Consumers pay more. And suddenly, inflation is higher. This is called cost-push inflation. The important thing is that the original problem wasn't necessarily that people suddenly wanted to buy more products. The problem was that producing and transporting those products became more expensive. And this creates a major headache for central banks. Because central banks can raise interest rates to reduce demand. But they can't produce more oil. They can't repair a blocked shipping route. And they can't stop a geopolitical crisis. Now we get to one of the most important parts of this story. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. A huge amount of the world's oil passes through this route. That makes it one of the most important economic choke points on the planet. If shipping through the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted, the consequences could reach far beyond the Middle East. Oil prices could rise. Insurance costs for ships could increase. Countries could compete for alternative supplies. And markets could start worrying about what happens next. But here's the key point. Oil prices don't need to wait for a complete shortage. Markets react to the possibility of a shortage. Fear itself can push prices higher. This is why the current situation is so important. The world economy is still heavily dependent on oil, while geopolitical tensions have made energy markets extremely sensitive to disruption. The question isn't simply, is there enough oil in the world? The more important question is, can the oil get to the people who need it? Oil is a global market. A disruption in one region can affect prices everywhere. And the longer markets believe that a disruption could continue, the more pressure there can be on energy prices and inflation. This creates a difficult situation for central banks. If energy prices rise, inflation could become more persistent. But if central banks respond by keeping interest rates high, borrowing becomes more expensive, and economic growth can slow. So a geopolitical crisis can potentially create a very uncomfortable combination: higher prices and weaker economic growth. That's the situation economists call stagflation. Now, there is an important reason why today's world is different from the oil crises of the past. The global economy is gradually becoming less dependent on oil. Electric vehicles are becoming more common. Renewable energy is growing. Countries are trying to diversify their energy supplies. And governments hold strategic reserves. All of this can reduce the impact of an oil shock. But here's the problem. The transition away from oil takes time. Airplanes still need enormous amounts of energy. Shipping remains difficult to electrify. Heavy machinery still relies heavily on fossil fuels. And oil is also used as an industrial raw material. So even if the world is moving away from oil, It hasn't moved away from oil yet. This creates an interesting economic paradox. The world is trying to reduce its dependence on oil, but during the transition, the global economy remains vulnerable to oil shocks. That means oil could become less important over the long term while still being extremely important. And that's why the situation right now matters. The world isn't simply asking, how much oil is available? It's also asking, can oil be transported safely? Will geopolitical tensions escalate? Will alternative suppliers be able to increase production? Will governments release strategic reserves? Will inflation rise again? And how will central banks respond? So, why can a war thousands of kilometers away make your life more expensive? Because oil is connected to almost every part of the modern economy. It moves products, it powers machines, it transports food, it influences inflation, and inflation influences central banks. That means a geopolitical crisis can eventually affect something as ordinary as the price of groceries or the cost of borrowing money. Oil may not control the entire global economy, but it still has enough power to shake it. And until the world finds reliable alternatives for every major use of oil, the price of a barrel will continue to matter far more than most people realize. Do you think the world is genuinely moving away from oil? Or are we still far more dependent on it than we want to admit? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe for more explanations of the economic forces shaping your everyday life.